Hello, and welcome to tonight's presentation, Orientation for New Fiscally Sponsored Projects. My name is Nathan Zabidio, and I am a program specialist in fiscal sponsorship. Thank you for taking the time to attend this webinar. We really appreciate having proactive members who go out of their way to learn about our program policies and procedures before they dive headfirst into their fundraising. Before we begin this presentation in earnest, I'd like to lay some numbers on you. The first is 19,920,648. This represents the current 12-month running total for what our fiscally sponsored projects have raised. As I'm sure you're by now aware, our fiscal sponsorship program extends some of the benefits of our 501c3 status to artists and arts organizations so that they can do things like solicit tax-deductible donations from individuals and institutional funding in the form of grants, which would typically only otherwise be available to nonprofits. We currently have just a little bit more than 4,000 sponsored artists and arts organizations who are producing either one-off discrete projects, like a single film or dance production, or we're sponsoring them for their ongoing artistic activities, like the ongoing work of a startup theater company or the work in progress of a visual artist. Ultimately, we have the largest fiscal sponsorship program in the nonprofit arts sector. And how many Fractured Atlas staff members would you guess administer this program? 7. That's right, we're able to run the largest arts fiscal sponsorship program in the country with a lean staff of 7 individuals, only 4 of whom are dedicated full-time to the program. This here is our dream team. Obviously, I'm at the top in the center because why wouldn't I be? But let me introduce you to some of the other folks here. So in the second row, all the way to the left, is Teresa Hubbard, who is also a program specialist in fiscal sponsorship. Dead center right beneath me is Courtney Harge, who is our member advisor. Then to her right is Aisha Jordan, and in the bottom left-hand corner is Lauren Lattimore, and they are both program associates in fiscal sponsorship. Last but not least, we have Sabrina Cedeno and Katarina Thompson, who are our membership advisors. And when you give us a call or shoot us an email, you could be working with any one of the 7 of us at a given time, depending upon the nature of your inquiry. The way we're able to run a program of this size so smoothly and efficiently is that we have custom-built online tools that mean that a large portion of the program is automated, and there's a great deal of functionality at your fingertips that allows you to control a large portion of your fundraising activities. And the purpose of today's presentation is to show you a path forward with our fiscal sponsorship program by giving you a tour of what's available for you on our website and outlining some of our program policies and procedures. So once our board of directors approves you for the program, you will be able to log into our site and access your My Fiscal Sponsorship page. This is your primary portal for interacting with the program. We're going to talk through some of the features of this page, as well as the program manual that you were emailed when you were approved for sponsorship. There's no substitute for hands-on learning, and we can't possibly cover everything in this presentation, so I encourage you to thoroughly explore this page on our website and read through the program manual. It's only 35 pages as your first steps once you're set up with sponsorship. One of the first things to understand about our fiscal sponsorship program is that it makes the distinction between earned and contributed revenue. Okay, so earned revenue is anytime someone is paying you for your goods or services. So ticket sales, merchandise sales, advertising sales, as well as if you are a teaching artist and people pay you tuition to attend your classes or workshops. Contributed revenue is donations from individuals who are contributing out of the kindness of their heart without the expectation of something in exchange, or grants from foundations or corporate sponsorship. Earned revenue needs to be made payable to you and your project directly. We do not process earned revenue through our fiscal sponsorship program for the purposes of the artists and arts organizations that we work with. We can only accept contributed revenue. Another thing to note is that we now accept projects that have a for-profit component to their fundraising activities, where they might be working with private investors or private equity. And when you apply for sponsorship, there is an addendum to our standard fiscal sponsorship agreement that we ask projects to sign if they're expecting for-profit investors. Even for those projects, we only process charitable donations from individuals or institutions for the purposes of our sponsored projects, so we're not accepting investment income. And we can help you process donations or contributed revenue 3 different ways. By debit or credit card on our website or on a crowdfunding campaign that you've created through our website. We can accept donations made via check that are payable to Fractured Atlas directly, and also non-cash donations of goods made in kind to the charitable purposes of your project. Each of our fiscally sponsored projects has a donation landing page on our website where they can direct donors who want to contribute by debit or credit card. We can accept credit card donations up to $20,000 per transaction. And if you are in the enviable situation of knowing a donor who wants to contribute more than $20,000 and charge it to their card, it's a great problem to have. First thing I'd want to know is how they are able to have such a high credit limit, but you'll also just need to have them contribute over multiple charges through our site and have them wait about 5 minutes between transactions so that our system doesn't think that it's a duplicate donation by mistake. That said, the vast majority of donors who want to contribute more than $20,000 are going to do so by check. When donors contribute by credit card through our site, they are required to provide an email address, and we automatically send them a receipt. Please note that you are prohibited from collecting credit card info from your donors and entering it in yourself manually on our site on your own. Donors must input their own debit or credit card info or contact Fractured Atlas to have us process a donation over the phone. It would open both you and us up to some liability issues with our payment processor, as you are not an authorized agent of Fractured Atlas who can use our credit card processor in that way. So don't do it. So your donation landing page is a public-facing page on our site where you should put content that you want potential donors to see. This can be an image or YouTube video and a brief description of your project or what your current activities are. You can edit your sponsored project's online profile on our website through your My Fiscal Sponsorship page under the Online Profile button. When you submit changes, an automated email will go to a member of our staff asking for review and approval before it goes live on our site. We typically turn this around in 1 to 2 business days. We'll either approve the changes outright or be in touch with you directly via email if we have any questions about the new material that you're putting up on your profile. We can also accept check donations that are made payable to Fractured Atlas, and Fractured Atlas only. You're welcome to have donors write your name or the name of your sponsored project in the memo line, but this isn't entirely necessary because we ask that your donors mail you their contribution first. You will then report donations made by check on your My Fiscal Sponsorship page under the Donations button. Here's what the donor report looks like, and it's where you'll create the donor record for check contributions. You'll provide the donor's name, contact info, and other information available to you from the check before forwarding it on to us for processing and deposit. You'd be surprised how many unreported checks arrive at our office, either sent to us directly from donors or from projects that don't realize that there's this step. And we end up spending a lot of time doing detective work to figure out which of our fiscally sponsored projects the checks are designated for. We often have to mail unreported checks back to the donor or back to you, as it's crucial that we receive this report in advance. So just to recap, your donors will send you their check contributions first. You will then submit donation reports on our website and forward the checks on to us for processing and deposit. You will be sent an email notification once the donation is processed with a copy of the receipt to forward on to your donor with your thanks. We can accept check donations of any size, but those of $2,500 or more require an extra piece of documentation, which we call the Major Gift Letter. The Major Gift Letter is a simple form letter template that's available for you to download from your My Fiscal Sponsorship page for your donor to complete and sign. You're able to upload the Major Gift Letter as an attachment to the donation report, but it's not required at the time that you submit the report. Feel free to send us the check to process before you receive the Major Gift Letter if you aren't able to obtain both at the same time, We're happy to report or to process reported checks of $2,500 or more without a major gift letter, but the donated funds will not be made available to you until we are in receipt of a signed and completed letter. As you can see, this is an old version of the letter. We previously had this requirement in place for check donations of $1,000 or more, but have recently increased that to $2,500 or more to help just be more convenient for our projects. A little context. As a nonprofit, we need to submit ourselves to an annual third-party audit where a team of accountants comes in and reviews our books to make sure that we are a healthy nonprofit that's obeying the letter of the law as handed down to us from the IRS. And part of that is that they ask us to have extra documentation on hand for particularly large donations. So the major gift letter helps us meet that important auditing requirement. There are a couple types of monetary donations that we actually cannot accept, and that is cash or money orders. In order for us to be able to issue a tax receipt, we need to be able to directly link money that we've received back to a specific individual or entity's bank account. A credit card transaction or a check with the donor's bank account and routing numbers on it provides us exactly with that paper trail, with that direct link. You are welcome to accept cash or money orders directly from donors who don't care about tax deductibility. If, however, they want a tax receipt, you'll need to instruct them to contribute via debit or credit card on our website or by check made payable to Fractured Atlas. So the third and final type of donation that we can help you process are non-cash, also known as in-kind donations. These donations have to be physical, tangible items that exist in the real world that you can touch with your hands, the ownership of which is fully donated over to your project. So let's unpack that a little further. So first, we can only process donations of physical, tangible items. They need to exist in the real world. You can touch them with your hands. Musical instruments, computers, food, beverages. Donations of a person's time or services are not considered by the IRS to be a charitable tax-deductible donation. So if a restaurant donates food to you, they can get a receipt for those items, but if they donate their catering services, they could not get a tax receipt that includes their contributed time. We can, however, accept gift cards or gift certificates from businesses that otherwise sell those items. In order to be tax deductible, non-cash donations need to be fully donated over to the charitable purposes of your sponsored project. So donations of rent or rental items wouldn't count. If someone gives you equipment for free that they would normally charge a rental fee for, and you need to return the items when you're done, that's really more of a loan. Similarly, donated space wouldn't count as tax deductible as you're only being given what's known as a partial interest in the property. So if you have a hotel sponsor that wants to give you some free hotel rooms, that's great, but likely we wouldn't be, or definitely we wouldn't be able to issue a tax receipt for it just because you're not getting to keep those hotel rooms to use forever for the nonprofit purposes of your project. Finally, due to the very complicated IRS rules and regulations regarding donations of vehicles, we cannot accept donations of airfare, air miles, or automobiles. As with check donations, you'll need to report non-cash donations on your MyFiscal sponsorship page. Here you will also be able to download the non-cash donation letter. This is another simple form letter template for your donor to fill out, where they provide a description and value to the items that they're contributing. You can upload the non-cash donation letter to the donation report when you submit it through your MyFiscal sponsorship page. For non-cash donations valued at $250 or more, we will also require a photograph of the donated item or items. So be sure that you take that photograph as soon as you receive the donation, especially if it's donated food or beverage. With all donations that we process for the purposes of our fiscally sponsored projects, we deduct an administrative fee to cover the costs of running this program. Our administrative fee pays for our staff time, our website, and things like credit card processing and bank fees. The fee starts at 7%, but as you raise more money, the fee is lowered on check donations. So here are the tiers that you'd have to hit. If you raise $150,000 or more over the lifetime of your fiscal sponsorship, the administrative fee on check donations goes down to 6%. At $500,000 or more, it is reduced to 5%. And if you raise $1 million or more over the lifetime of your fiscal sponsorship, the fee goes down to 4%. And we have had projects raise at least that much money over their time with us, so these aren't imaginary numbers that projects have never raised. I would also like to point out that the fee remains at 7% for credit card donations, as the processing fee that we incur does not change. We also charge a 7% fee on the stated value of donated non-cash items. And you can either have us charge this fee to your credit card on file that you pay your membership dues out of, or have us deduct it from your available fund balance. And you can always check your fund balance on your My Fiscal Sponsorship page here. But maybe we're going a little too fast. Should take a step back. Let me hold my horses here, because before we even start processing donations, how do we get people to actually consider making a contribution? And the very simple, very basic, very kindergarten level answer to that question is we ask. And this is often the first hurdle that budding arts entrepreneurs encounter. Every day, I talk to artists or arts startups who experience an initial queasiness about actually asking people for money. I encourage our fiscally sponsored projects to consider themselves in good company. All nonprofit artistic ventures in the United States require philanthropic support to stay in operation. So that's true for the Metropolitan Opera in New York, or the Getty Museum in LA, all the way to a small theater company on Main Street, USA. And don't consider it panhandling or begging. Consider it an offer. You're offering potential patrons an opportunity to get involved with something bigger than themselves. And with fiscal sponsorship, you're offering them tax deductibility as well. As soon as you're approved for fiscal sponsorship, we recommend that you send out an appeal asking for people to make a donation and to let them know that their contribution will now be tax deductible. So some different ideas, maybe an email blast, a snail mail campaign, a newsletter, put it on your website, host a fundraising event, run a crowdfunding campaign. All of them you should consider at some point as a part of your larger fundraising strategy. We have an individual appeal letter template among other fundraising templates available for you to take a look at on your My Fiscal Sponsorship page. Crafting a good letter is more than just plugging your info into a formula and pressing send, so I would strongly encourage you to use this template as a way to kickstart your brainstorming about the letter that you intend to send out. But before you send your appeal to potential donors, please send us a copy first for our review and approval. You can email your fundraising materials over to support@fracturedatlas.org. That's support@fracturedatlas.org. A good rule of thumb is that anytime you mention Fractured Atlas or promise patrons tax deductibility, you should run it by us before sending it out. We require that you do this for a few reasons. First off, it's in your best interests to have another experienced pair of eyes take a look at what you're about to send out. At this point, I've reviewed probably hundreds, if not thousands, of donor solicitations at least, and we have a pretty good idea of what a successful, well-presented appeal letter looks like. This is true of everyone on staff. We can offer you some tips and tools to potentially maximize the effectiveness of your fundraising materials, so we'll definitely provide feedback where appropriate. But we're also looking to see that you're correctly representing the fiscal sponsorship arrangement. To that end, we've crafted some what we call quote-unquote standard text that we require you include with your donor solicitation materials. For those of you following along, this can be found on page 12 of the program manual. It's just a quick 2-sentence paragraph that succinctly summarizes the fiscal sponsorship arrangement. So this is it. Excelsior Dance Company is a sponsored project of Fractured Atlas, a nonprofit art service organization. Contributions for the charitable purposes of Excelsior Dance Company must be made payable to Fractured Atlas and are tax deductible to the extent permitted by law. So your version of this text is not going to have Excelsior Dance Company, it'll have the actual name of your project. And you're welcome to include it as fine print at the bottom of your materials, but it must be in there somewhere. We're also looking to see if you're offering donors anything in exchange for their contribution. For example, advertising space. If you've got the program manual up in front of you, I would encourage you to look at pages 30 to 31, which are, there's a list of prohibited activities there. And we'll be interested, especially if you're writing to a business, to see if you are offering either advertising or corporate sponsorship to that business. So as you'll see in the list of prohibited activities, it's actually against our policy for you to be offering an advertising opportunity in exchange for a tax-deductible donation. We make the distinction between advertising and corporate sponsorship. Advertising, that would be an earned revenue opportunity. So if you're selling someone ad space, they'd be making the check payable to you directly or sending their payment to you directly. An advertisement would be when you are giving space in your program or on your website over to either a business or an individual for them to create content as they wish. So, and it's also likely going to be qualitative. So let's say you've approached Home Depot and they make something that says, Home Depot, we're better than Lowe's. That's going to be an advertisement because it's qualitative, it's about creating business for them. But let's say Home Depot says, you know what, we're going to give you $1,000 to support your work because we like what you do. And it would be nice if you just put our logo in your program or listed our name in a list of sponsors. So that's a situation where you're not giving space over to an advertiser. You're in control of content and you're just saying, thanks so much to our generous donor, Home Depot. Other things we might be looking for, are you running a raffle? And this might be a good idea, but you're prohibited from running it through your fiscal sponsorship with us. To reiterate, you cannot award donors raffle tickets in exchange for a tax-deductible donation. Raffles are considered a form of gambling, which is regulated at the state level often, and so it's not something that Fractured Atlas wants to get involved with. Whenever you offer donors rewards of goods or services in exchange for their contribution, this makes their donation partially deductible above and beyond the fair market value of the rewards that they're receiving. So for example, if I'm asking for a donation of $100 and I'm going to give you a t-shirt that you would otherwise have to purchase for $10 in exchange, then your donation is partially tax deductible. And the partially deductible amount is the amount that's above the value of what you're getting in exchange. So in this example, it would be $90, the amount above the value of the $10 t-shirt. We need all donations that we process to be at least partially tax deductible. Fully deductible donations are totally fine, where you're saying, hey, I'm looking for $100, and you're really not going to get anything of value in exchange. Just the feelings of goodwill associated with being a generous donor. You wouldn't be able to offer donors rewards of equal or greater value to the amount that they're contributing. So I'm asking for a donation of $100, and I'm going to give them prizes valued at $100 or more in exchange. Such a transaction is no longer contributed revenue, but it's a purchase or earned revenue, so something that we wouldn't be able to process on behalf of our sponsored projects. One place where partial deductibility often comes into play is with a crowdfunding campaign. We'd previously partnered with the websites Rocket Hub and Indiegogo so that our sponsored artists could create campaigns on one of those two sites that would still have been linked back to us. A few years ago, Rocket Hub was bought out by a venture capital firm, and they ended campaign-based fundraising, so our partnership with them ended. And fairly recently, Indiegogo ended all of their fiscal sponsorship partnerships based on changes that they were making to how they collected donations through their site. Fortunately, we kind of knew that was in the works, so we created our own crowdfunding platform, currently called Fundraising by Fractured Atlas. And, it's the year 2017, so it's likely that you've heard of crowdfunding before. You've probably supported campaigns yourself if you haven't run one already. And we encourage our projects to run a campaign at least once as part of their overall fundraising strategy. Here's an example of one of our sponsored projects campaigns on our new crowdfunding platform. As you'll see, a lot of the bells and whistles associated with standard crowdfunding platforms are here. A video, a goal has been set, there is a hard deadline, a place for text, as well as different giving levels or rewards. And again, these rewards are often partially deductible, so we'll be looking for you to provide info related to the fair market value of what you offer your donors in exchange. To opt into this new service, this new platform, you just go to your My Fiscal Sponsorship page, click the Accessorize button, and there's a link to get started setting up your first campaign. If you don't want to run a crowdfunding campaign but still want to offer giving levels, you can actually add them to your standard donation landing page on our site. Here's some examples here. And you can do that by logging into our site, going to your My Fiscal Sponsorship page, and clicking Giving Levels underneath Donations. All right, so let's talk about applying for grants. So fiscal sponsorship can open the door to institutional funding, like from foundations or corporations. And as with approvals of your individual donor materials and crowdfunding campaigns, we want to be involved when you apply for grants from these sources, so from foundations or corporations. Before you start looking at grants, however, you should be aware of our grant eligibility requirement. So we require fiscally sponsored projects to have raised at least $1,000 from other sources before they are eligible to apply for grants through Fractured Atlas. This requirement is in place based on feedback from funders who are largely uninterested in awarding grants to artists or arts organizations that don't have an established funding base or previously committed support. So it's really about making your grant proposals that much more competitive that you can point to a track record of success where there are people in your community or in your field who are showing their support for your work monetarily through a donation. If you've already raised $1,000 for your project within the last 2 years, we're happy to waive this requirement for you if you can provide some kind of documentation for your previous fundraising. So let's talk a little bit about the grant review process. With individual donor materials, we turn review around really fast. Usually 1 to 2 business days, we can read through, provide feedback on your material. With grants, it's a little different. We ask for 10 business days to review your grant materials. So if you've got a deadline coming up, try to send it to us at least 10 business days in advance. We do this because we like to do a deep dive on your grant materials, where we're really thoroughly reading what you've prepared, as well as researching the funder to make sure that you and Fractured Atlas are eligible fits for their opportunity. We might also need to generate content ourselves for the application or provide some kind of documentation from Fractured Atlas proving our 501c3 status, or financial paperwork might be required from us as supplementals to your application. If you need us to review a grant in a shorter time frame, so if you've got a deadline that's tomorrow or within the 10 business day window, we often need to charge a $75 rush fee to expedite review. Another thing to keep in mind is that very often on grants, Fractured Atlas is the applicant of record, and award payments will likely come to us directly. For a lot of grants, there's also a contractual requirement. Usually we'd be signing it on your behalf. Sometimes you might be signing it. And often part of that is a reporting requirement. So with individual donors, likely they'd be happy to just get a thank you note and periodic updates on how your work is going. But with a foundation, often they will want a formal report back on how their funds were used. One of the things that we do is we set up automated reminders in our system to ping you when these reports are due, and we'll be involved in that process as well. Okay, so now you've successfully solicited donations and gotten some grants or had patrons donate to your fiscally sponsored project. What next? How do you access these donated funds? Well, first you'll need to send us the info for your project checking account, which you can do by downloading the sign-up form for Electronic Funds Transfer, or EFT, from your My Fiscal Sponsorship page under the Fund Releases button. We strongly recommend that you have an account for your project's finances that is separate from your personal finances. It doesn't need to be a business bank account. It can just be a separate personal checking account. But likely if you end up working with an accountant, they'll prefer to see that as well, that you're keeping your business income totally separate from where your weekly paycheck gets deposited into. Here's what the EFT sign-up form looks like. It's pretty simple to complete. And you can send us the completed form with a voided check from your account in one of 3 ways. Scan and email them to support@fracturedatlas.org, fax them to 212-277-8025, or snail mail them to us. And all of our contact info is available on our website. So our payment processor requires that we have a voided check to substantiate the account and routing numbers for your checking account. If you don't draw checks from your account, but it's just an online bank account, we can accept other forms of documentation like a bank statement for your account that includes the full account and routing numbers, or a signed letter from your bank that documents that information. Once we've received your checking account info, you'll be able to submit a fund release request through our website for available funds. We hold all donations for 7 days after we process them to make sure that the check doesn't bounce or the credit card charge isn't disputed. And then after 7 days, donated funds are available for you to request, unless we're waiting on a major gift letter for a check donation of $2,500 or more. We're happy to hold on to donated funds as long as you need us to, into perpetuity if need be, provided that you remain a dues-paying member of Fractured Atlas with an active fiscally sponsored project. And then we'll release them to you once you have project-related expenses. So we do not automatically transfer funds to our sponsored projects. As a fiscal sponsor, we need to demonstrate that we maintain a certain degree of discretion and control over how funds raised through our program are used. The fund release request process is a control mechanism in place to make sure that our fiscally sponsored projects are using funds in alignment with our charitable mission. When you submit a fund release request, you'll let us know how much money you need and how you'll be spending the money using some pretty broad expense category budget line items. So you can say that $1,000 is for public relations and $500 is for space rental. There is an expense category that's called quote-unquote other, but here's a helpful hint. We almost never let anyone use the other category as an explanation for their expenses. Almost 100% of the time, your expenses will fit into one of the other categories provided. One thing that you're not allowed to do is re-grant funds raised through our program to another individual or entity with no strings attached. The best use of fiscal sponsorship is to raise money to create art, to spend on project-related expenses related to the creation of art or the service that you're providing if it's an artistic service. And this can include paying people a salary or stipend for their time, but you're not able to award scholarships or grants through fiscal sponsorship to other entities, again, with no strings attached. If you want to offer a scholarship program, you're welcome to use funds raised through our program to pay for specific tuition expenses or expenses related to the education of that student. What you wouldn't be able to do is just give them a lump sum of money for them to go do with what they will. If you do want to offer a no strings attached scholarship or award program, you're welcome to do that using funds that were not handled through our fiscal sponsorship program. So if you have an earned revenue stream, like through ticket sales, you can take that money and do with it what you will. But all expenses paid out through your fiscal sponsorship with us, they need to be specific project-related expenses where there's a paper trail, there are receipts or quotes or contracts. And for particularly large fund release requests, we might ask for that documentation. So invoices, if you got a quote from a contractor, if you paid for something and have the receipts for it, we want to be flexible with what documentation that you can provide. So we can even accept screenshots from websites, like if it's part of your project to travel abroad to go to a fringe festival, you can send us a screenshot from the Priceline website showing what the airfare is going to be or what the hotel costs are going to be. And our definition of large fund release requests is that for all requests of $5,000 or more, we will require this documentation. If it's your first fund release request of $3,500 or more, we will also require documentation at that time. And our preference is to see as much documentation up front, although we're happy to have a conversation with you about what timeline works for you to get us the documentation. So if you can give us 80% of the receipts up front and then a week later get us the remaining 20%, we're happy to help with that. But again, it will require you to have a conversation with us to work out that time frame. So when you apply for fiscal sponsorship, if you recall, you were asked to provide a legal entity with a U.S. taxpayer ID. So this is either an individual with their social security number or a business entity with its employer identification number or EIN. We can work with any type of legal entity, but the vast majority of new applicants sign up as individuals or sole proprietors using just their name and social security number. We ask for this because funds disbursed through our fiscal sponsorship program are reported as income to that legal entity in the form of a grant. Each January, we issue a 1099 miscellaneous to individuals, partnerships, and LLCs showing funds disbursed the previous calendar year as Box 3 grant income, and they need to file this 1099 with their other tax documents. Corporations are not issued 1099s, but they will still need to report Fractured Atlas income when they file. That said, this is not that scary a requirement. You should not necessarily have to pay income tax on Fractured Atlas fund releases. Because we only release funds to you when you request it for use on your specific project-related expenses, you should be able to offset the income on your taxes using the expenses that the funds paid for. We strongly recommend that you use an accountant to file and keep careful documentation of your expenditures. And again, the 1099 is only showing funds disbursed in a given calendar year. So if you raise $10,000 in a given year, but only disperse $7,500 of it, the 1099 is only going to show $7,500 worth of income, which you hopefully have all of the documentation lined up for so that you can offset that income using the expenses that the funds paid for. An important thing to keep in mind is that your project is a separate business entity from Fractured Atlas. One of the great aspects of this is that you maintain complete ownership over the work that you create. But we do not grant you 501c3 status. Only the IRS can do that. Rather, we're extending some of the benefits of our nonprofit status to the projects that we sponsor. So to that extent, we'll want you to check in with us on a few things. Primarily, the use of our tax ID. I'm sure if a friend of yours asked for your social security number, you would be curious about why. In the same way, anytime you encounter a situation that requires our EIN, please let us know so that we can advise on its usage. We're happy to provide sponsorship confirmation letters addressed to specific potential donors or sponsors to help grease the wheels, but we cannot provide a one-size-fits-all confirmation document with our EIN, as we want to be involved and kept in the loop each and every time someone is requesting our info. Just email us at support@fracturedatlas.org. We wanted a little bit of context for the request, but also who to address the letter to, their name and contact info. So we're not able to help you set up a bank account using our EIN. Any account that you create needs to be set up in your own name with your own tax ID. So all of this is just to say, don't sign up for anything that requires our tax ID without running it by us first. We can also provide a letter to help you obtain nonprofit rates from vendors that offer them. It's ultimately up to the vendor if they are willing to extend to you the discount, but most are willing to do so. And this is especially helpful with space rentals. If the venue offers a nonprofit rate, we can usually help you get a discount. Again, just shoot us an email, we'll send you a letter. Nonprofit rates do not apply to bulk postage for your mailings. This is something that you would only have access to if you had your own 501c3 status. Another limitation is that we're not able to help you with sales tax exemption. And there are many reasons for this. The most important is probably that our lawyers told us not to. But the next most important is that only purchases that are made directly by Fractured Atlas qualify for sales tax exemption. And even then, it's only in New York State. So because we're disbursing funds to you for you to then pay your expenses directly, you wouldn't be eligible for the sales tax deduction. And as a matter of basic fairness for artists that are not located in New York State, in addition to the fact that our lawyers told us not to, we are not able to extend use of our sales tax exemption certificate. The final major fiscal sponsorship policy to bring to your attention is our annual report. For any fiscally sponsored project that either processed donations or requested fund releases in a given calendar year, we're going to require that you submit to us an annual report updating us on your activities. The report is due on April 1st, and we will send out 3 reminders starting at the beginning of the year. If you don't complete the report by April 1st, we will freeze your project, which means that you're not able to accept new donations or request new fund releases. But it's relatively simple to unfreeze your project. All you need to do is submit the report. You can access your annual report on the My Fiscal Sponsorship page under the Info Reports button. The report is entirely online, so you don't need to prepare a separate document, and there are 2 major components. The first is that we ask you to provide a brief narrative description of what you accomplished the previous calendar year. This can be as detailed as you'd like, although we'd prefer that you keep it relatively brief so that it doesn't take us too long to review. With the narrative, you provide a numerical impact for your work to show how many people were exposed to the art that you made and how many artists participated. We also ask for updated financials. Because we only process contributed revenue for our fiscally sponsored projects, we are only aware of income and expenditures related to the funds that we've handled. So here's an opportunity to tell us about other funds handled separately from our program, where they came from and how they were spent. Also, if you changed how funds released were used, like if you said that $1,000 was going to be used for transportation, but you ended up spending it on utilities, here's your chance to let us know so that we can better adjust our own books. The annual report is another important way that we demonstrate the discretion and control over how funds raised through our program are used. But this is also a way for us to collect data about the artists and arts organizations that we serve so that we can better understand our own impact in the nonprofit arts sector in the United States. The more accurately you can provide your data, the more complete is our picture for the kind of business our sponsored projects are able to do in their own communities. Okay, I'm going to wrap up momentarily, but I hope you've gotten a sense for how easy our fiscal sponsorship program is to use and how much power you have at your fingertips through the online tools available on our website. I would encourage you, once again, to thoroughly explore your My Fiscal Sponsorship page and our program manual for a more comprehensive overview of all of our program policies and procedures. And before we conclude, I'd like to quickly plug Fractured Atlas's other programs and services. The first is Artfully, which is our in-house custom-designed ticketing and customer relations management software. A lot of great features to Artfully, not least of which is that you can create a ticketing widget if you're selling tickets to an event that you're producing, or even just asking for free RSVPs, and you can drop that widget right onto your own website so that your patrons don't have to click through too many times in order to make a purchase. The back end to it, the CRM, customer relations management aspect, is also incredibly valuable in that you're able to keep all of your patrons and donors and purchasers listed in one place and keep track of how you got in touch with them. Artfully syncs with your fiscal sponsorship, so when someone donates to your fiscal sponsorship with us, they automatically have an entry created for them in your Artfully CRM. I'd also like to talk briefly about Space Finder, which is our online marketplace that matches renters to venues based on their unique needs. So you can do a very customizable search for space, not only looking for rehearsal space or exhibition space, but does this space have sprung wood flooring for our dancers or a specific type of equipment that we're looking for? Some of the venues have their calendars synced with their listing on Space Finder so that you can see exactly when they're booked and exactly when they're available. And of those venues, some additionally have the option to pay for your booking through their listing. So it's really a one-stop shop for artists who want to find any type of space to either create or exhibit their work in. And finally, our insurance program, which helps minimize your risk. This is business liability insurance for the most part. So if you are renting out a theater space and the theater requires that you have a policy that covers damage to their venue or injury to spectators in the space, we'd be able to help you by having you submit an application for a quote through our website. Excuse me. We'd shop it around to a bunch of different insurance carriers that we partner with via our insurance brokers, the name of their company is Locked in Affinity. And then we'd get you a quote that hopefully is both comprehensive and competitively priced, which you then purchase through our site. And we'd be able to help give you certificates to demonstrate your coverage and process claims if something goes wrong and you ultimately need to file a claim against your insurance. So this webinar is just one of many in a whole series. I encourage you to check out our website for a complete calendar of upcoming presentations. These are the topics that we typically cover. And finally, we're going to wrap up. Thank you again for taking the time to attend tonight's presentation. By this point, if we've done our job right, you should have a more clear picture of the road forward for how to use our fiscal sponsorship program to its best extent. Don't be strangers now. Hope to talk to you soon. Bye-bye.